Hey everyone, welcome to the series that's been in slumber for a bit, but here it is, back with a vengeance. This is my shmup review play of Deathsmiles. Specifically, what we'll be watching today is the Steam version, 2 rank 3 runs. Rank 3, or level 3 I guess in this game, was always a bit of a challenge for me, and it wasn't until recently I finally buckled down and put in the practice and time to actually get these clears. And the funny thing is that as nice as the Steam and 360 ports are, but they both do have their issues, one huge flaw with both of them is that their training modes are pretty suspect, to be honest. They do have a level select, which is nice of course, and you can change the rank and change your bomb counts and things like that, which is all nice. Except there's no checkpoints in the level select like you get on a lot of the other Steam ports or 360 ports of cave games, where you can go to the mid-boss or to the boss and all that kind of good stuff, or at least the boss, right? But in Deathsmiles, no, you can't even go to the boss, there's no checkpoints for that. And so that was a big issue because I needed to practice the final stage's bosses, and I also needed to get through the final stage, which is this massive difficulty wall compared to the rest of the run, and so it was putting up a huge challenge, so I ended up using Groovy Mame to get my save state practice in, so shoutouts to Kiwi, and I don't know if Kiwi actually has been working on it, but I think a little bit. And I know Pearl, Kiwi, Mariscan have been working on getting the Groovy Mame slowdown a little bit more accurate. That's something that we've all been kind of chipping in, and I did a little bit of that with Deathsmiles. I'll need to return and kind of hone in the slowdown because it was still running a little bit too fast, I could tell. But it was good enough for me at least to do some save state practice at the time, and that really helped me, especially with the final stage. And so what's funny is that this stage 1 boss here, this part is always kind of a bit of a choke point in the run where I didn't want to use my bomb early, especially with the next stage coming up. So I would have a fair amount of stage 1 resets because of this boss, where I, want to get us started on the good foot, so I didn't just play it out. If I got hit, I would reset the stage. So I think on average I was having about a 50% reset rate on stage 1, which I guess isn't that big of a deal in all things considered because I wasn't resetting as much in the other stages. But just that stage 1 boss can be tricky at times, especially with that one pattern where it'll kind of speed up at the end there, hibachi style. One thing I need to mention too is I'm playing the arcade mode of these games, so they have all these different modes, Xbox or on Steam. I think it's Steam mode. I can't remember what it's called. It's not called Steam mode, but whatever it's called, it's basically the Xbox mode. But I've decided to play on arcade mode because from what I understand, the slowdown is a little bit more accurate in arcade mode than in Steam mode. It's a little bit more generous, whereas in Steam and 360 mode it's just greatly missing a lot of slowdown, which can be really challenging, especially in the later stages. And I also played arcade mode, and this is just conspiracy theory, but it did feel a little bit more responsive to me. I don't know if it's actually more responsive, but perhaps maybe just the way the slowdown works or the whatever visuals work, but it felt more responsive to me at least, so that's what I went with. I don't know if it actually is or not though, but I ended up liking playing the arcade mode more than the Steam modes and stuff like that, so I chose arcade for both Black Label and for regular. So shoutouts to Neon Daggers. He showed me this really cool trick in this stage, which is your hyper recharge, where if you bomb in the right spot you can recharge your hyper, and that's greatly beneficial. Except, and I did learn how to do it, Neon Daggers, however I didn't quite pull it off in the run, as you see. I got a little bit of a recharge, but I didn't get a full recharge. It's a pretty precise trick. If you can get it, it's really good for scoring because it greatly improves your score. But since I, got a little bit of it, I just played it out because I'd have a pretty high reset rate if I was constantly resetting when I missed the charge. So overall, took a half a bar of health. I wasn't happy about that. This game, especially since the last stage is so brutal, it's all about conserving those resources, and Deathsmiles is pretty interesting compared to other cave games where the stages are shorter, as you see, but there is more of them, so you can't afford to be taking too many hits early on because you're going to run out of resources pretty quick. This boss was another kind of choke point in the run, just like the first boss, even more so because of this section here where the rocks fall down on Rosa's head. Other characters have a little bit of an easier time with that because they can put their option above their head and then just have the option kill the rocks before they land on you. However, with Rosa, her option movement is backwards compared to traditional shmupping. So traditionally when you play shmup, at least like with Rolling Gunner and with most of the other kind of games with moving options and stuff, if you go into focus fire, your shot will get locked in, and then when you're in rapid fire or regular fire, your shot moves around and stuff, or your option moves around and stuff. That's the way a lot of the characters work. But Rosa's backwards, where when you're in rapid shot, that's when her option holds still, and then when you're in focus shot, which you're doing against bosses and things like that, when you use focus shot a lot in this game. When you're in focus shot, the option is actually moving around. So there is a bit of extra precision you have to gain with the option because of that, especially in the later stages when you have to start absorbing suicide bullets and stuff, which I'll talk about when we get there. One technique that Neon Daggers did point out to me that was also really helpful is basically you want to tap dodge with your focus shot. So you kind of tap at a certain rhythm with your focus shot to where you're maintaining your focus, but you're not moving as much as you would be if you were just holding the button. That trick becomes massively important in the later stages, especially when you have to precisely move this option around and absorb the suicide bullets. As far as rank 3 goes in arcade mode, I think it's actually fairly forgiving at first. So for the first like 70% of the game, rank 3 isn't that much different from rank 2. Yeah, the bosses are a little more aggressive, the enemies are a little more aggressive, but really not too bad of a difference. And so when I first started playing it, I was like, oh, this is a cakewalk. But then it gives you a nice filthy lag difficulty spike in the last 2 stages basically. And that's where most of the difficulty actually comes from. The difficulty in these stages is all about just conserving the resources as much as possible. For instance, this last attack here is a little bit more challenging in rank 3 than the other ones, where it's kind of threatening if you're not careful. It has these scythes and you have to dodge those scythes and then dodge the bullets. If you set that up nicely like I did there, it's not too much of an issue. But if you put yourself in a weird position, you can kind of get walled in by the scythes, so something to be mindful of. So I also want to talk about Deathsmiles itself too, not just the run. Deathsmiles is my favorite horizontal shmup. I like it more than Rolling Gunner, I like it more than Pro Gear. I'm not saying that it's better than those games, but it definitely is my favorite. Some of the reasons for that is I really like the unique control system the game has. I actually feel like it's really intuitive and fun, where you have basically 4 different shot buttons. You have 2 different shot buttons, but when you add in rapid shot you end up with 4, where you have the forward, or facing to the right rapid, facing to the right focus like you would in most shmups. But then you have it where your character can turn around at any point and shoot to the left. And so that adds in a lot of really cool dynamic ways the game plays, because it plays very differently than your traditional horizontal shmup because of this, because you have to take account for both areas of the screen. And so rather than the back of the screen being the usual kind of safe area for you to hang out, the center of the screen becomes the safest area, because that's the point where enemies will spawn the furthest away from, either if they're in front of you or behind you. So it's really cool. It really does change up the way the level design works, the feel of the game works, and it also allows for you to sort of have to work on prioritizing target switching more and more, and just like that's the situation right there, right? Where I had to figure, okay, do I kill the guy on the right? Do I kill the guy on the left? Strategically moving forward, especially in the later stages, is also really important. And little things like moving forward but shooting backwards and stuff like that. Just overall, I really like the way the game controls, and it's a little bit challenging at first to get used to, but once you get used to it, it's really, really fun. Another reason I like Deathsmiles so much is just the visual and musical aesthetic, the style of the game. I think it's really cool. It has this sort of like Nightmare Before Christmas, Halloween Town sort of vibe that I think is really cool. Of course, there's the whole aspect of the characters being young girls, and that being a very controversial aspect of the game. I remember when Deathsmiles first came out, or sort of first came out, that was a very large focus of many of the reviews of the game, people talking about it, even if they liked it, feeling like the game is disturbing or going too far. As far as myself, at this point, playing as much video games as I do and being exposed to as much Japanese media as I have been, at this point, to me, I'm basically desensitized to all of it. It doesn't register with me at all. Same thing with Toho and stuff like that. I think honestly, Deathsmiles is a little more blatantly sexual than Toho is. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not, right? At least you could say that Rosa's somewhat near of age, right? But some of the other characters, it's a little bit, I don't know, whatever. You know, like, that's how these developers roll. That's what they're all about at times. You know, same thing with the girl from Riko. I couldn't remember her name for a second. From Mushi, right? It's kind of a similar thing there too as well. So if that's something that's really bothering you about this game, I don't think there's really much I can say to change your mind other than, you know, try not to take it too seriously. And I don't think the game takes itself too seriously either. There's definitely an underlying layer of kind of tongue-in-cheek whimsy and that sort of thing. So I never have really taken the game too seriously, you know, in those regards. And, you know, at the end of the day too, these aren't really like highly detailed models or anything like that. They're just these little small character sprites that could easily be whatever age you imagine them to be. Rosa could be 30 for all we know, right? Like the little sprite on the screen, the character art's a little bit different, but the sprite on the screen really doesn't communicate that much at all, so this is always a really funny boss fight. I think the bosses in this game are really interesting. The sort of realistic looking cow is especially stands out. But it works, you know, it for some reason, as odd as it is, it does work. It fits into the style of the game. Probably because, like I said, the game doesn't take itself too seriously. But also the cow does look kind of good. It doesn't look as bad as like Soul Divide or something like that with their 3D models. I do wonder if that's like an actual video of a cow and they just like did some modification of it, or if that's fully animated. I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell. The backgrounds in this game are also really cool. They stand out to me a lot. Just Cave took a very different approach to the style and aesthetics of this game, and even stuff like the menu here or the level select where it's like Mario 3, select the stage type of stuff. All that stuff I think is really cool. Makes the game stand out. Deathsmiles 2, of course, I'm not even going to bother reviewing that one because I don't really like Deathsmiles 2 very much. Maybe someday I will actually, but right now I don't feel like it. So I do wish that the Deathsmiles series did kind of continue on a little bit more after Deathsmiles 2. Because I think the gameplay and the style have a lot of potential. And from what I understand, it is one of Cave's more successful, if not the most successful, like 360 release or shmup they ported. I could see that. I could see why. It feels very accessible. The difficulty of the game is less, you know, out of the box, definitely, than other shmups. But I wouldn't say it's that much easier than stuff like DFK. But maybe at higher levels of gameplay, maybe it is. But then again, when you play Mega Black Level at level 99 or whatever, 999, that seemed pretty insane, so it's a Cave game, so you'll find the difficulty if you're looking for it. The scoring in the system in this game, I'm not going to really talk too much about because it's, from what I understand, pretty damn complicated. It involves picking up items and all this sort of stuff. But basically, what I was doing when it came to scoring that was effective is you use your option to absorb suicide bullets, and then once you get suicide bullets, your counter up here, you enter a hyper, and you just murder everything with your hyper, rinse and repeat. That's kind of the basic idea for using the the scoring system of the game, basically knowing strategically what areas are the most beneficial for you to hyper. You know, it's all about managing that gauge, I think, to cash in at the right times. This boss, fighting him, he's actually fairly simple to beat once you know that you just need to stay low on the screen. If you go up high on the screen, he's gonna give you a lot more trouble, but if you just stay low, especially with these final patterns here, keep your option kind of on the ground and stay low, you'll murder most of its projectiles and stuff before they cause too much of an issue. So looking at my life and all that, I'm a little bit lower on resources than I would have liked. I think I got clipped a few times. But so far it's still definitely doable, at least in my mind as I'm playing. One thing that I also like about this game is the health system. I think it's pretty cool how you have like a health bar, but it's basically what happens is if you take physical damage, you take half a bar of health, and if you get hit with a bullet, you take a full bar. But you can actually use that strategically at times, which I did in one of the runs, not in one of these unfortunately, but one of my main runs where I ended up getting the clear. What happened was that on Jitterbug he has this attack, and if you don't bomb during the attack you get a life up. However, I only had one life left, and there's a certain part of the attack I'll point out when we get there that's extremely challenging, and basically I was going to die. So what I did was, instead of taking a bullet and dying and losing, or bombing and then not getting those life ups, which would have then ended up in me losing anyway on the final boss, what I did was I rammed him and took the physical damage, and then during the invulnerability of the physical damage I point blanked him and then got the extends off him. So that's just kind of a cool example. I kind of wish I did it in this replay, but I don't. That's a kind of cool example of abusing that system to your advantage. So here we go, the castle stage. This stage was the major point of difficulty in the game. This is where rank 3 feels absolutely insane. Getting to this, for like, pretty experienced shmup players, I bet a lot of you could get to stage 3, or not stage 3, this castle stage in 1 credit on your first try, perhaps, if you have a little bit of experience with Deathsmiles. But then clearing this stage your first try, that's just not going to happen unless you're just really good, because the difficulty spike ramps up significantly. And so to get through this, I ended up just having to memorize the entire stage a lot, spending like 3 or 4 hours just learning the entire stage over and over. Right here, this is where you can really start cashing in. See, this is how the scoring system, you can see how it works now, right? Where you get that hyper and you just start cashing in on all those suicide bullets like that. There's some really lucrative sections. So what I learned here, if you turn around and shoot, all these suicide bullets spawn. So this probably isn't great for your score, but for survival it's definitely the way to go. Just don't shoot and you'll be safe, a lot safer. So moving forward, the rest of this stage is going to be all about placing my option, which is pretty dang challenging because, like I said, it moves when you're in focus shot and holds still when you're in just regular rapid shot. But the problem is that you need to be in focus shot a lot, and so a lot of it does come down to setting up that option and then being able to kind of control it while you're moving around, which is pretty challenging. The next ship type that I play on the next replay doesn't do this. It is more traditional, so in that sense it is easier to control. But I also just really like playing Rosa. She's a really cool, kind of swaggy character, and from what I understand, at least comparing her to the characters I've played, she seems really powerful as far as dealing damage. She seems to, from what I have experienced so far at least, I haven't played all the ship types, but the ship types I have played, she seems to deal the fastest amount of damage to like enemies and bosses and stuff like that. I think that's the trade-off for her kind of crazy option movement and everything like that. But it's also nice at times to have the ability to hold regular shot and then lock it in too. So at the end of the day, if you learn it and practice it, it is pretty dang good. It's just a matter of time. I would be interested to see kind of like the scoring potentials of the different ship types, or the different girls, I guess. I could have looked that up, but I sort of forgot. I think the last ship type that I play, though, seems to be really, really good, so I wouldn't be surprised if she's the one that has the highest scores. But I think I recall seeing pretty high scores with Rosa. I might be mistaken there, but I at least have saw some really high scoring replays with her. So I do think she is pretty good overall. This section here, it's all about, like I said, that target switching and then knowing where to place this option and dodge stuff. I've done really, really well on this section, by the way. This is why the run ends up in the replays, because I played that section better than I had any other run. I was absolutely just on it. I was feeling it. There were some pretty tight dodges too if you go back and watch. Even stuff right here, this section, while less scary than the section below, still I'm really happy with how far I've been able to get without getting hit in the stage. Here we go, the weird sort of like interlude section before the boss fight. This section used to drive me crazy, but the more I play it, the more it's kind of grown on me. It's pretty fun. So to deal with those trolls and then the upcoming dogs, the idea is to just point blank them and take them out ASAP. And then be able to place your option in advance so you can make a nice little escape for yourself. Took the hit there. Since I already had half a bar of damage, there was no need to, like I said, strategically hit an enemy for invulnerability. Which you can do also on just regular stages too, doesn't have to be boss fights. So after that death, I was like, okay, let's just spend the resources. Because I'm not going to bomb anyway, right? I'm not going to bomb on the boss. So might as well just use them here. Because what's probably going to happen is I'm probably going to get hit and lose those bombs anyway, so might as well use them to just make this nice and safe. I think that was some pretty good strategic material use there. Strategic bomb usage. That's why knowing your routes is really helpful, because it can help you decide what resources to use, you know, and all that sort of thing. So here we go. This is the boss fight where if you don't bomb him, you get 2 extends out of him. Thanks again to Neon Daggers for pointing this out to me. That was definitely the knowledge that made this run seem insane to definitely possible, because yeah, this last boss fight is very challenging, and I had been bombing it up to this point because I didn't realize you could gain extends by not bombing him, so that, you know, that's a massive amount of resources that I was missing out on. Some pretty decent slowdown right there, pretty close to the 360 version. I should have gone up there, as I knew I should have, but at the same time I was like, well, maybe this will be worth it. It's kind of like hasty thinking. See, this pattern here is where I wish I would have done that strategy of like running into him and getting a vulnerability to point blank. But I was kind of scared that he had a little bit too much health to do it, and then once I decided to do it, I couldn't get to him with all the bullets in the way, so it didn't really work out, but luckily I had that extra extend to keep me in the game. And so now you notice I've gained 2 extends back, and I have 3 bombs. This is looking really good. As long as I don't choke this first bit here, I'm feeling very confident. Normally I dodge through that, but I felt like, see, that was bad. That was just a bad hit there. Something I should have dodged. This section here, the way you do it when I watched the higher level replays is you turn around, you place your option behind you and turn around and you shoot backwards as you dodge the pattern. Which I did practice with save states, but I never could get it to work well. I just didn't have the precision, so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to use the resources and bomb my way through it. And then just work on learning the other patterns better, which I ended up doing. Because I think it was a good way to go about things. That's another thing you can do when you're struggling to clear shmups and stuff like that, is that you can start to prioritize, okay, what patterns am I going to learn, and what patterns should I just resource spam my way through. So So this is the one time I used targeting magic in the run. Targeting magic is if you hold your left and right shot, you create this sort of lock-on thing with your ship, which seems really good, but for the most part, for most of the game, it's actually not that good. But on that pattern in particular is where it comes in handy for sure. The sperm bullets. I feel like that was intentional on Cave, some intentional innuendo. There's just no way that's a coincidence, right? There's just no way. And so after that hit, I was like mashing the bomb button harder than I've ever mashed before, making sure I got the clear there. So here we go into the ending, which I think is pretty entertaining. Deathsmiles it feels like it has more story than some of the other games, or at least I'm able to follow it a little more closely than the other games. I can't kind of tell. It seems like based on the endings, Jitterbug is the father of all these girls, that these girls are sisters of some kind. But that doesn't seem to fit either, because the girls will say, like, my friend, refer to each other as my friends and stuff like that. I haven't looked any of this up. This is just going based off the endings that I've seen. So maybe Sakura and Rosa are sisters? Because they both seem to be daughters of Jitterbug, but then at the same time, maybe that's just kind of weird translation and that's not actually what's going on. Maybe he's only Sakura's father. I know he's her father for sure. Maybe he's not Rosa's father. It's hard to tell. But yeah, the Rosa ending's pretty interesting. And you have two different choices. I actually don't know what happens if you choose the other choice. If you end up like playing a second loop, I could see that. I guess I should watch some replays and see if that's what it does. Or if it's just like a story choice thing. I'm not sure if it affects the gameplay at all. I would kind of suspect that it does. Maybe you unlock an extra stage, or maybe you play a second loop of the game or something. I'll have to watch and see. Or again, maybe it's just a story, like you choose a different ending for the character. But it seems like when Rosa returns back to the world, she has a happy ending, right? This seems like a good ending. Whereas the other character's ending seems like the bad ending, so I'll have to look into that a little more and see what's going on there. Congratulations, Rosa. I tried to skip through the credits a little bit there, yeah. And here we are, the score entry. I actually played this all on my laptop rather than my usual desktop, and the reason why is that I was visiting my parents, and so I, just had my laptop available, and it's not powerful enough to play and record very well, so I was really happy to be able to use this replay data. I was really nervous because after I got my Mushi Maniac clear, as you all know, at least people who follow the channel, I got that and thought on the 360, and I thought that the 360 would save the recording for me, or the input file, but it didn't. So I was really nervous after I got to the end of that one that the same would happen, but luckily it did not. I was able to preserve the run, and we were watching it now. So then after that, I thought, okay, now let's play some Mega Black Label. And I expected it. So Mega Black Label, this is rank level 3 in this mode as well. There's also a level 999 mode, which just seems insane. I think it's just maxed out rank, would be my guess. Yeah, it's very, very challenging. I didn't get far in it at all. So I went with the rank 3 clear for Mega Black Label as well. And I do have to say that Mega Black Label is more challenging than Arcade, but at least for rank 3, not as much as you'd think. They're pretty close together. Another thing too is I think this ship type here, Sakura, she's just really, really good. And so that also I think makes up for the difficulty difference between the two, where Rosa is more challenging to use, whereas this chick is just made to be a beast. I'd be very surprised if she wasn't the most powerful character in the game, because for one, she has 2 options rather than 1. They seem to provide really good coverage. They're easy to control. She has a nice wide shot there. Really, her only flaw that I found is that she deals less damage on bosses than Rosa, so it takes longer to kill bosses and stuff with her than at least Rosa does. But at the same time, her other advantages definitely make up for that, for sure. So I went ahead and just bombed that, because I actually didn't expect this run to be a clear, because it's a pretty early one. I think this is like my 3rd attempt, and so I thought I was just practicing at this point. And so that's why I did the bomb, because I thought, well, screw it. I'm just trying to get through this stage. I expected to run into a harder wall than I did, but after that stage, everything started going really well. So the thing is a lot of these stages I don't want to repeat the commentary too much, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just let these stages speak for themselves, let them play out, and then I'll pick up the commentary again on the last stage so we can talk about that. So, enjoy the run. If you want to hear the rest of my commentary, I'll be commentating the last stage, but from there I don't have too much to say. I've kind of said everything I want to say about the game, and these are 2 back-to-back replays that are 2 very similar runs, so see you there.
所詮悲しい運命なんです。さあ頑張ってらっしゃい。
So here we are, the final stage of Mega Black Label, rank 3. And so while the run was running, I was also thinking I should probably talk a little bit about the different ports of the game and all those types of things, which I have mentioned a little bit before. But overall, the ways to play this game are to either play it on PCB, which of course I don't have access to. You can play it on the Xbox 360, which is usually my de facto version. You can play it on Steam, and you can play it on GroovyMame. The issue with the Xbox 360 port, I feel like, is just, it kind of has a crappy training mode, to be honest. And this issue carries over to the Steam port as well. So that's the issue with the 360 though. The Steam port, while having that issue, also has a much larger issue where it has just pretty unfaithful slowdown. I feel like it is a little bit better in arcade mode, but when it comes to playing in essentially 360 mode and that kind of stuff, its slowdown is just not accurate at all, so that's unfortunate. That's why I think if you're playing on the Steam version, just play in the arcade modes, except I think there's an arrange mode, but outside the arrange mode, just play in the arcade versions. That would be my suggestion. Another thing about... So then let's talk about GroovyMame. So GroovyMame, I'm working on this build right now, which I'll release somewhat soon. But GroovyMame, I got it working with, you know, modern displays and stuff like that, to where it's being a pain in the butt. So it does run pretty well. It's only half a frame more laggy than the Steam version, which is pretty good, to be honest, but it's still a little bit much. It's 3.5 frames about. So most of the time you're getting about 3 frames, but every, you know, like 25% or 40% of the time, kind of in that area, you're getting 4 frames. So kind of is one of those on and off type things, which is a bummer. But I couldn't get it any lower than 3.5. I couldn't get it to stay kind of locked into 3 frames, unfortunately. So this section here, I anticipated doing much better with it with Sakura rather than Rosa, because of her amazing options. But it turned out that even though theoretically I think that would hold up, just because I'd played so much more Rosa, I actually did way better in this section with her than I did with Sakura. At least from what I recall, as you'll see coming up here. Maybe not, maybe I'm wrong. No, I only have one extend, so maybe I think maybe I made mistakes earlier in this stage, actually, and that I did really well in this section. I think I got a little bit confused there, now that I think about it. Because I don't have many resources left, right, so I can't do poorly anymore. This is probably the toughest part of the stage right here, this section. Doing well so far though. Not surprising considering the amount of coverage those options give to just munch up all those suicide bullets. It's extremely, extremely useful. Delayed that activation a little bit. Got the extend. I remember breathing a sigh of relief there. I was pretty nervous because I was thinking to myself, okay, I could actually get this done now. I'm very close. And you know, I didn't necessarily want to do another grind session for the game, having that I had been working on grinding out runs for it for a few weeks at least, I think. So I was happy to get this as quickly as I did. I think this was like my 3rd or 4th attempt, just period. And the only reason why is because it plays so similarly to the arcade version as far as the difficulty. There are some little extra spikes here and there, but nothing compared to, you know, like being as much of a jump as like the level 99 version, right? Which is just pure chaos. The thing here is you need to always take those centaurs out immediately. So I put myself in a really bad position there because I let those centaurs survive for even a few seconds. That you just need to kill them as soon as they appear on screen. Another thing too with the suicide bullets is just remaining patient. It's really important, because if you try and rush a lot of the dodges, there won't be any openings, but if you just stay patient, let your options eat away at most of the bullets, Usually you can find a nice safe gap to make your way through. The section here, so I've got one bomb, which I probably will use here because why wouldn't I? But yeah, the resources are not looking all that good. Not at all. Especially since I have the Jitterbug fight coming up. I need to take him out without bombing, right? So yeah, I bombed here, no surprise, because that bomb was going to be useless to me anyway. And I remember thinking right here, okay, the run's over, I'm gonna die. There's obviously a chance I'll make it to Jitterbug, but I've really stacked the chances against myself more than I needed to, because I think I played pretty poorly coming into the stage at the early part of the castle stage, but played well at the later part, which is usually reversed. So here we are, Jitterbug. I remember looking down at my hyper and being like, oh man, I don't think I have enough hyper to kill him. So how am I going to handle this? I had no missed him before, of course, but it's not easy, especially with his later patterns. Comes down to just playing very, very carefully. Oh, so I did end up getting the hyper. That's pretty big. I think that's the key thing. I was able to get that hyper just in time. That's perfect timing on that hyper too. There's the cake. Now we're in business. I remember thinking like, oh yeah, I got this shit. Just don't blow it right here. So since I had no bombs, my goal was, this is clutch mode time where I need to just really hone in and take this extend as far as possible. The further I can push this, the better I'm gonna be, because I always hate being in boss fight situations where it comes down to the wire if you can avoid it. So taking the hit there, that's okay though. Not a big deal. The half a hit thing of damage doesn't really matter too much at this point. I intentionally decided not to use targeting magic there. And the thing is I was so close to canceling that pattern before getting hits, which is a shame. So right here, trying not to be shy about the bomb usage. I was thinking, okay, I pretty much got him now. Remember thinking that. Yeah, there we go. No issues at all. Yeah, I'm pretty good at that pattern, but I bombed it just for safety's sake, just in case. That's all she wrote. Pulled it out with an extra extend in the bank too. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, thanks for watching, and let me end by thanking my patrons. So thank you to Dingo, Anthony A, Ben Wynn, Brian Shiver, Dunpeel 2064, EC2151, Eric H, Full Set, Retro Schmupper, Gus, Kiwi, Jake Ryan, Joe Angelo, John, Gameboy Guru, Kay, Quentin, Malaise, Mark Sloan, Maz, Meher Calendrian, Nathaniel Davis, N Electron, Neon Daggers, Okla Kugels, Parlar, Rhysosis, Sarah Thumbs, Scentmore App, Tsugumo, Turopan, Young Money Swee, Plasmo, and Utakaya. Thanks for watching.